I thought I had seen the worst of HOA power plays. But nothing could have prepared me for the day the president's daughter literally stole my machine out from under me. Imagine waking up, standing in your garage, admiring a project you've poured 6 months of blood, sweat, and busted knuckles into, only to watch a spoiled teenager swing her leg over it and vanish like she owned the place. That was my nightmare, my unwelcome introduction to how far the Dukes, the royalty of our neighborhood HOA, would go. It started ordinary enough. Saturday morning, sun breaking over rooftops, the Texas air already warm. My garage door sat open, breeze rolling in, tool bench tidy, the metallic tang of oil and grease still hanging in the air. There she was, Madison Duke. 16 years old, daughter of Karen Duke, the queen of bylaws herself. Madison leaned against her mother's golf cart, the one branded with HOA president like a royal seal. Phone in one manicured hand, eyes fixed on me with that practiced smirk. An expression teenagers wear when they've never been told no in their lives. That's a nice toy, Cole, she said, voice lazy, as if simply speaking to me was beneath her. I kept my rag moving over the ATV's seat, unwilling to rise to her bait. It's not a toy, Madison, I replied, flat, calm, and you're standing on my property. Her bored gaze flicked sideways. Technically, the driveway is common area. Mom says so. Bylaw 7, Section C. She recited it like gospel, preached not out of understanding but arrogance. I dropped the rag, eyes locking with hers. The slab I poured and paid for belongs to me. Take another step, and it's trespassing, she laughed. Not kindly, not even nervously, a real ugly bark just to assert control. Then, eyes darting into my garage, she scanned my shelves with the nose of a scavenger. Wrenches. Mower. And then her smirk sharpened like glass when she spotted it. The magnetic box stuck like an afterthought to the side of my cabinet. The spare key box. My gut nodded immediately. Too late. She knew what it was, and I knew she knew. Mom says your ATV's a violation anyway, she said louder. Obnoxious. Doesn't match the neighborhood aesthetic. It's in my garage, Madison. Not parked on the green. Not making a sound. Go bother someone else. I turned my back like a dismissal, coiling an extension cord, praying she'd slink away like a raccoon finding an empty trash can. That was my mistake. Too much silence behind me. The kind of silence only predators use, patience sharpening its teeth. My phone buzzed on the ATV's seat. Motion alert. Doorbell camera from the interior of the garage. I clicked it open. And there, in high definition, was Madison, quick as a thief rehearsed, slipping inside, lifting the box, pocketing the key with a smirk of malicious glee that made my jaw clench. The camera caught her whole face crystal clear. She didn't even try to hide. She thought she was untouchable, her smug grin reflecting in every pixel. She darted out like a shadow, sneakers crunching gravel softer than my pounding pulse. By the time I stepped onto the edge of my driveway, she wasn't lingering. She was already swinging herself onto the ATV seat like it had been hers all along. Click. Key into ignition. Rev, the garage shook with the engine's roar. No helmet, no hesitation. Just arrogance in pink tank top and white shorts. She glanced back once, lifted her phone like she was filming, winked at me through her camera lens, then jammed her thumb on the throttle. The ATV tore out of the drive, fishtailing slightly, before she corrected and took off down the street, one hand steering, the other holding her phone overhead, live streaming the crime, screeching down my neighborhood at dawn, turning my 6-month restoration project into a prop for her audience. For a breath I just stood there, pulse stone cold, watching my Can-Am vanish. Not hot anger, not wild fury. Something worse. A simmer so cold, so deliberate it made my hands tighten into fists. Pam stepped onto the porch behind me, coffee steaming in her hand. She'd heard it. That sound, was that the ATV? She asked. I held up my phone, showed her the notification, frame frozen on Madison's theft. Part 1 of the problem is recorded, I said evenly. She took the key. Then she took the bike. Pam's eyes widened. Madison? Are you kidding me? Did you call the police? I am calling now. My voice didn't so much as shake. My grandfather always said, keep your head while everyone else is losing theirs. He was a mechanic who'd fought back bar fights, handled engine fires, raised with grit. Now his words anchored me. Madison was losing her head for an audience. I'd stay the calm storm. Minutes later, I was in my truck, footage on my phone, dispatch patched through by Pam. The operator's voice came steady through the speaker. Mr. Mercer, can you confirm you are following a stolen vehicle? That's correct, I said, eyes narrowing on the familiar speck up the boulevard. My ATV, my project. No helmet on the driver. Phone in her hand. Theft broadcasted for likes. Green 22 Can-Am Outlander, restored after 6 months' work. Driver is female juvenile, 16 years old. Name, Madison Duke. Blonde hair, pink tank, white shorts. Driving recklessly. Sir, we do not advise you pursue— I'm not pursuing, I cut in. I'm maintaining a safe visual. Witnessing. Reporting in real time. Vehicle currently northbound on Lakeside, approaching Crestwood Roundabout. Click of keyboards on the other end. Copy that, sir. Units en route. Continue updates. Up ahead, she swerved recklessly, weaving both lanes, face plastered with that delighted grin as she live-streamed her felony. I gave dispatch every detail. Dry satisfaction coated my words when I added, "She's creating her own evidence." Pam's voice came clear across the line. No nonsense now. Cole, doorbell footage is crystal. Shows her take the key. I've logged into your Can-Am account too. Didn't you stash an AirTag in the storage compartment? I almost smiled. Yes, I had. Waterproof baggie, taped inside the rear box. My 1 ounce of paranoia had just become our biggest advantage. Got it, she said quickly. Tag is pinging. GPS location is live. I've already relayed it to 911. And that was the moment her reckless compliance check stopped being a stunt and started being a case. Madison thought she'd stolen my machine. In reality, she'd strapped herself to a spotlight. Evidence pouring in from her livestream, from my cameras, from my GPS. Every turn of her throttle was being mapped. Got it, she said. I'm tracking it. The tag is active. I have a precise GPS location. I'm relaying it to the 911 operator on my end. They'll have her exact route second by second. This is why I married her. While I was the calm one on the ground, she was my eye in the sky, my mission control. She saw the whole board while I was just looking at the next move. We were a well-oiled machine. The Dukes, for all their bluster and power, were just a rusty collection of mismatched parts. They relied on intimidation and people giving up. They never planned on running into someone who wouldn't. Up ahead, Madison took the roundabout way too fast. The ATV tilted precariously on 2 wheels. For a heart-topping second, I thought she was going to flip it right into the manicured petunias in the center island. But she managed to wrestle it back under control. She was drunk on her own perceived power. This was about more than just a joyride. This was a statement. Her mother, Karen Duke, ran our HOA like her own personal kingdom. She fined people for having the wrong shade of white on their trim. She sent threatening letters if your grass was a 1/4 of an inch too high. She had Gage, her head of security, a wannabe cop with a power trip and a golf cart, patrol the streets like a private army. Karen ran the HOA like a throne. Rules were for other people. Madison learned it by heart. Sir, a patrol car is approaching your location from the east. The dispatcher's voice cut through my thoughts. Please remain in your vehicle and let the officers handle the situation. Will do, I said. I saw the flash of blue and red lights in my rearview mirror. A police cruiser was coming up behind me. As it passed, I saw another one up ahead, positioned to toe block the intersection Madison was speeding toward. They had her boxed in. It was over, or at least it should have been. Madison saw the lights. Her reaction was predictable. Instead of stopping, she panicked. She yanked the handlebars hard, cutting a sharp right turn onto a smaller residential street. A street filled with kids playing, people walking their dogs. The danger level just spiked. She's evading, I said into the phone, my voice tight. She just turned east onto Willow Creek Lane. This is a residential street. Low visibility. Units are in pursuit, the dispatcher confirmed. Sir, please pull over to the side of the road. Let them pass. I did as she said, pulling my truck to the curb. The first cruiser sped past me, sirens now blaring. I watched it go, a knot tightening in my stomach. This was escalating. This was turning into something much bigger and uglier than a simple theft. This is when stupid turns dangerous. And it was all because a girl who had been given everything thought she was entitled to one more thing. She thought she was untouchable. Now, with police cars closing in, she was about to find out how thin that bubble of protection really was. The only question left was who she might hurt before it burst. I sat in my truck listening to the distant sirens. The immediate chase was out of my hands now, and that was for the best. My job was to be a good witness, not a vigilante. I saw the second police cruiser turn onto Willow Creek Lane following the first. The quiet Saturday morning was officially over. My phone was still connected to dispatch. Mr. Mercer, please stay on. Thaleen, an officer will be with you shortly to take your statement. I was about to respond when a new vehicle appeared coming from the opposite direction. It was a large white SUV and it was driving far too fast for a residential street. It screeched to a halt right next to my truck, the tires protesting loudly. The driver's side door flew open and outstormed Karen Duke. She was dressed in what I assumed was her weekend power outfit. A pastel pink tracksuit, gleaming white sneakers, and oversized sunglasses that hid half of her face. Her expression, however, was not hidden at all. It was a mask of pure theatrical fury. She slammed the car door with enough force to rattle the windows and march toward my truck. I rolled down my window, my face a perfect blank. I wasn't going to give her anything to work with. "Cole Mercer!" she shrieked, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "What do you think you're doing? You're harassing my daughter. I'm going to have you arrested." I just looked at her. "Your daughter," I said, my voice low and even, "stole my all-terrain vehicle from my garage. The police are now involved because she is evading them. I'd say she's doing a fine job of getting herself arrested all on her own." Her face contorted. It was fascinating really watching the gears turn as she tried to find a way to make this my fault. In her world, nothing was ever the fault of a duke. Problems were caused by other people, lesser people who failed to accommodate their whims. She did no such thing. Karen snapped. "Madison is a good girl. She would never." "I have it on video, Karen." The words were simple, but they landed with the force of a physical blow. I saw her flinch, just a tiny, almost imperceptible twitch. But it was there. She knew. She knew exactly what her daughter was. Before she could come up with a new line of attack, one of the police cruisers that had passed Memoments before looped back around. It pulled up behind her SUV, lights still flashing. A tall, serious-looking officer got out. He had a calm, authoritative air about him. He walked toward us, his eyes assessing the situation. He looked at Karen, then at me. "Are you Cole Mercer?" he asked, his gaze settling on me. "I am officer," I said. "And you are?" he asked, turning to Karen. "I am Karen Duke, president of this HOA, and this man is harassing my child," she declared, pointing a trembling finger at me. The officer's expression didn't change. He was clearly used to this kind of drama. "Ma'am, your daughter is currently fleeing from police on Astalin vehicle. I suggest you calm down." He turned back to me. "Sir, can you tell me what happened?" As I started to recount the story, the open garage, Madison's taunts, the theft of the key, the doorbell video, Karen began rummaging frantically in her oversized purse. She was searching for something, her movements jerky and desperate. Finally, she pulled out a piece of paper. It was a single sheet, folded and crumpled, as if it had been living in the bottom of her bag for weeks. She brandished it like a weapon. "You can't do anything to her," she shouted, waving the paper at the officer. "It's not her fault. She's a condition." The officer stopped writing in his notepad and gave her a weary look. "A condition?" "Yes," Karen said triumphant. "She has spontaneous seizure syndrome. It's a very serious medical issue. When it happens, she gets confused. She's not responsible for her actions. This paper proves it. It's a legal document." She thrusts the paper at him. The officer took it, his face unreadable. I leaned out my window trying to get a better look. It wasn't a doctor's note. It wasn't a legal document from a court. It looked like a generic form she'd printed off the internet. At the top, in a bold generic font, it said Medical Exemption Notice. The text below was a garbled mess of pseudo-legal terms talking about diminished capacity and medical necessity. And at the bottom, where a doctor's signature should have been, was a looping, arrogant scrawl. Karen Duke, she had filled it out and signed it herself. The officer read it. He looked at the signature line. He looked back up at Karen. He folded the paper neatly in half and handed it back to her. "Ma'am," he said, and the exhaustion in his voice was profound. "This is not a legal document. This is a piece of paper you signed. It doesn't exempt your daughter from vehicle theft." Karen's face fell. The triumphant fury drained away, replaced by a sputtering, indignant rage. "How dare you? Do you know who I am? I am the president of this community. I will have your badge for this." The officer just sighed. "Ma'am, right now, the only thing you need to be concerned with is your daughter's dangerous behavior and the criminal charges already in motion. Please step back." He turned his attention back to me. It was at that exact moment that we heard it. A high-pitched scream followed by the squeal of tires and a sickening crunch of metal. It came from the next street over Willow Creek Lane. The officer's head snapped up. His hand went to his radio. "All units, what's the status on that pursuit?" My blood ran cold. That wasn't the sound of an arrest. That was the sound of a crash. The sound of something going horribly, horribly wrong. Karen's fake legal document was forgotten. Her empty threats evaporated. The game was over. Madison's joyride had just collided with the real world, and I had a terrible feeling that someone else was about to pay the price. The officer didn't wait for a response on his radio. He was already moving, sprinting back to his cruiser. "Stay here!" he yelled over his shoulder, a command directed at both me and Karen. He jumped into his car and sped off in the direction of the crash, sirens screaming. I stayed until a second unit waved traffic forward. Then I rolled in slow, well behind the perimeter. I watched him go, a cold dread washing over me. Karen stood frozen on the pavement, her face pale, the ridiculous seizure paper fluttering from her hand. For the first time, a crack had appeared in her armor of entitlement. The sound of that crash was the sound of a reality she couldn't control, couldn't bully, and couldn't sign a fake form to make go away. I put me truck in drive and followed, keeping a respectful distance. I wasn't going to get in the way, but I had to see. I had to know what had happened. I turned onto Willow Creek Lane and my heart sank. The scene was chaotic. My ATV was sideways in the middle of the street. One front wheel bent at an unnatural angle where it had slammed into the curb. An officer photographed it, then called a tow for impound and prints. Madison was on the ground, tangled up in a rose bush in someone's front yard, crying hysterically. But that wasn't what held everyone's attention. That wasn't the center of the horror. A few feet from the ATV, a baby stroller lay on its side. Its wheels were still spinning. A young woman who I recognized as Sarah, a new mom from down the block, was on her knees on the grass, clutching her baby to her chest. She was shaking, her face as white as a sheet. A small crowd of neighbors was gathering, their faces a mixture of shock and anger. The first police officer was already with Sarah, checking on her and the baby. I parked my truck and got out, walking slowly toward the scene. I kept my distance, not wanting to intrude. From what I could piece together from the tire marks on the road and the position of the stroller, it was terrifyingly clear what had happened. Madison, trying to evade the police, had come tearing around the corner. Sarah had been walking on the sidewalk. Madison must have lost control, swerved off the road, and headed directly for them. Sarah must have had a split second to react, to shove the stroller out of the way. The ATV had missed the baby by inches, clipping the stroller's wheel and sending it tumbling before Madison finally crashed into the curb and was thrown into the bushes. The baby started to cry, a thin, frightened wail. He wasn't hurt. The cry meant he was scared, not injured. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard because it meant he was alive. Sarah was murmuring to him, rocking him back and forth, trying to soothe him, though she was crying herself. Her husband, Tom, came running out of their house, his face a mask of terror. He saw his wife and baby on the lawn, the wrecked ATV, and the police, and he just knelt down and wrapped his arms around his family. The air on the street turned ice cold. This wasn't about a stolen vehicle anymore. This wasn't about a spoiled teenager acting out. This was about a baby who was almost killed. The neighbors weren't just curious onlookers anymore. They were witnesses. Their expressions had hardened. I saw Mrs. Gable from 2 doors down, her arms crossed, her mouth a thin, hard line. I saw Mr. Henderson, the man Karen had fined for a garden gnome, staring at Madison with undisguised contempt. The protective bubble of the Duke name had just popped loudly and for everyone to see. Karen finally arrived, her power walk now a frantic, stumbling run. She pushed her way through the neighbors, her eyes wild. She saw Madison crying in the rose bush and rushed to her side. "My baby, are you hurt? What did they do to you?" she cried, ignoring the overturned stroller, ignoring Sarah and Tom, ignoring the very real tragedy her daughter had nearly caused. That was the moment the neighborhood turned on her completely. "What did they do to her?" a voice called out. It was Tom. He had stood up, his baby now safe in his arms. His face was filled with a righteous fury I wouldn't have thought him capable of. "Your daughter almost ran over my son. She almost killed my child. And you're asking what we did to her?" Karen seemed to see him for the first time. She looked from Tom to the overturned stroller, and for a second, I thought I saw a flicker of remorse. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by her default setting, aggressive defense. It was an accident. She has a medical condition. She was confused. She started to bluster, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. The crumpled paper was still in her hand, a pathetic, useless talisman. No one was buying it. The officer who had taken my statement walked over to her. His face was grim. "Ma'am, your daughter is being placed under arrest. She is facing charges of vehicle theft, felony fleeing, and reckless endangerment. You need to step away and let the paramedics check on her." Madison's wails intensified as a second officer approached her, but it was all for show. The paramedics quickly determined she had nothing more than a few scratches from the rose thorns. As they helped her up, she looked around at the silent, staring faces of her neighbors. Her face, tear-streaked and dirty, was no longer arrogant. It was scared. She was finally truly seeing the consequences of her actions. She wasn't untouchable. She was just a scared kid in a whole lot of trouble. As the officer led a handcuffed Madison to the back of a patrol car, I made eye contact with Pam, who had walked down the street to join the crowd. She looked at me, then at the shaken family, then at my wrecked ATV. Her face was a mixture of anger and grim determination. She held up her phone and gave me a slight nod. The message was clear. This was no longer just about getting my property back. This was about making sure the Dukes were held accountable for the danger they had brought into our community. We had the video of the theft. Now we had a street full of witnesses to the reckless aftermath. The evidence was piling up. But Pam's look told me she thought there was more to this story. Something bigger than one stupid, reckless teenager, and we were going to find it. The rest of that afternoon was a blur of police statements and insurance calls. My ATV was towed to an impound lot, a mangled piece of evidence. Madison was taken to juvenile hall. She spent the night there before seeing the judge. Karen, after a final screeching tirade about lawsuits and conspiracies, was told to leave the scene. The street slowly returned to normal, but something had fundamentally changed. The quiet peace of our neighborhood had been shattered, and in its place was a simmering collective anger. That evening, Pam and I sat at our kitchen table. The adrenaline had worn off, replaced by a cold, methodical resolve. "This isn't just Madison being a brat," Pam said, her fingers flying across her laptop keyboard. This felt planned, or at least the way Karen reacted with that ridiculous fake doctor's note. She had an excuse ready to go. It's like she expected Madison to get caught doing something. "She's arrogant," I said, sipping my coffee. "She thinks she can manage her way out of anything." Her solution to her daughter committing a felony was to print a form from the internet. "That's not a master plan. That's just stupidity." "Maybe," Pam said. Her eyes narrowed in concentration. "But let's not underestimate them. They've run this neighborhood for 5 years through bullying and bluffing. Let's see what happens when we call their bluff with actual facts." She turned the laptop toward me. "Let's build a case." What followed was a masterclass in modern suburban intelligence gathering. Pam started with a simple text to a neighborhood group chat she'd created a year ago. The one for people who were tired of the HOA's overreach. "Hi everyone. For those who saw the incident today, if you have any doorbell or security camera footage of the green ATV between 10 a.m. and 10:30 a.m., could you please send it to me? We're creating a timeline for the police." The response was immediate. Within minutes, video files started pouring in. It was like a digital neighborhood watch snapping into action. We had footage from the Miller's house showing Madison blowing through the stop sign at the corner. We had a clip from the Garcia's front door catching the audio of her shouting, "Can't catch me!" as she sped past. Every clip added another layer to thestery, painting a picture of pure, unadulterated recklessness. We stitched them together, creating a minute-by-minute video log of her destructive journey through our community. While the videos came in, Pam focused on the digital trail. She pulled up the AirTag data. On the screen, a winding red line snaked through our neighborhood. It showed her route perfectly from my driveway down Lakeside, her frantic detour onto Willow Creek Lane, and the final abrupt stop where she crashed. "GPS data," Pam murmured, saving a screenshot. "Precise, irrefutable, and admissible in court." But then she saw something else. She zoomed in on the map, her brow furrowed. "That's weird," she said. "Look at this." She pointed to a spot on the map a few blocks away in a cul-de-sac at the edge of the neighborhood. The red line showed Madison had stopped there for about 90 seconds before continuing her joyride. Why would she stop there? I wondered aloud. That's the end of the street. There's nothing there but the back fence. "And the HA's maintenance shed," Pam added, her eyes lighting up with a new idea. "Let me check something." She opened a new browser tab and started typing. She went to a popular online marketplace, the kind of place where you sell old furniture and used cars. She typed a few keywords into the search bar. Compliance pickup in our neighborhood's name. A handful of listings popped up. They were all vaguely worded. One was for a landscape debris pickup service. Another was for a patio furniture removal. But the language was strange. It was full of HOA buzzwords. Item must be in violation of community standards. Pickup scheduled to ensure aesthetic compliance. The photos were generic, often just a picture of a pickup truck. The sellers all had new profiles with no ratings. "What am I looking at?" I asked. "I'm not sure," Pam said, clicking on one of the ads. "But this feels off. Compliance pickup. That's not a real thing. It sounds like something Karen would invent." She kept digging, cross-referencing the seller names with the public list of residents in our HOA. She got a hit. One of the sellers, Gary P., had the same last name as one of the HOA board members, Gary Peterson, Karen's right-hand man. Then she found it. An ad posted 2 days ago. The title was Recreational Vehicle Compliance Seizure. The description was chillingly specific. For removal of non-compliant recreational vehicles, ATVs, dirt bikes parked in view of the street as per HOA Bylaw 11F. Pickup and hold fee $500. The photo was of an empty flatbed trailer. The seller's name was Community First. The contact info was a disposable email address. Bylaw 11F, I muttered. That doesn't exist. I've read the bylaws cover to cover. She made it up. Pam's face was grim. "Cool. I think we just found out why Madison stole your ATV. It wasn't a joyride. She clicked back to the AirTag map and zoomed in on the 92 stop in the cul-de-sac. She wasn't just stopping. She was meeting someone with a trailer, maybe. The plan was probably for her to drive it there. They loaded up and then they used this fake ad to extort $500 from you to get it back. It all clicked into place. The theft, the fake bylaw, Karen's immediate and practiced excuses. This wasn't just a joyride gone wrong. This was a shakedown, a clumsy, poorly executed but very real attempt at extortion. They were using the HOA as a cover for their own personal towing and impound scam. Madison wasn't just the spoiled daughter. She was the repo agent. The police pursuit had just messed up their plan. They're running a racket, I said, the words tasting like acid. They're stealing from their own neighbors and calling it compliance. Pam looked at me, her eyes hard as diamonds. And we just found the proof. She pointed to the recreational vehicle compliance seizure ad. It was still active. They were surrogate. They didn't even bother to take the ad down. An idea started to form in my mind. A cold, simple, and beautiful idea. They want to pick up a non-compliant vehicle, I said slowly. I think we should give them one. Pam grinned. The sting was on. We now had a mountain of evidence, a clear motive, and a way to catch them in the act. The question of who was untouchable was about to get a very public answer. The plan came together with a quiet, satisfying click, like a well-made lock. We weren't going to be vigilantes. We were going to do this by the book, a book Karen Duke clearly hadn't bothered to read. The first step was a call to the police department. I asked for the officer who had taken my statement, Officer Miller. I got his voicemail and left a message. Officer Miller, it's Cole Mercer. We've uncovered some new information regarding the theft of my ATV. It appears to be part of a larger, organized scheme. Please call me back. He called back within the hour. His voice was tired but professional. I laid it all out for him calmly and logically. I told him about the suspicious stop on the AirTag route. I told him about the marketplace ads, the fake bylaws, the connection to the HOA board. I could hear him typing as I spoke. When I finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Mr. Mercer, he said finally, are you telling me you believe the HOA president is running an extortion scheme using her daughter to steal vehicles they then hold for ransom? That's exactly what I'm telling you, I said, and we think we have a way to prove it. I explained the idea. We would use a different ATV, a beat-up older one my buddy Chase had in his garage as bait. We'd park it at the end of our driveway, partially covered by a tarp, making it look like a new violation. Then we'd answer the ad. Pam would pose as a disgruntled neighbor, tipping them off about the non-compliant vehicle at my address. We'd arrange a pickup. We want you there, I said. We want you to witness the transaction. We want you to catch them red-handed. There was another pause. I could imagine him weighing the risks, the procedural hurdles. This is irregular, he said. So is an HOA president running a theft ring. I countered. Look, we have video of the first theft. We have a dozen neighbors who witnessed the reckless endangerment. We have the online ads. This isn't a hunch. This is a pattern. Help us stop it before someone else gets hurt. Okay, Mercer, he said, a new energy in his voice. I'll run it by my sergeant. Don't do anything until you hear from us. But if we do this, you follow our instructions to the letter. No heroics. You are a witness, nothing more. Understood. Crystal clear, officer. I said, the next 24 hours were a tense waiting game. The police sergeant approved the plan. He set the rules. We stay hands off. They handle the stop. They saw the bigger picture. This wasn't just about my ATV anymore. It was about rooting out a pocket of corruption that was terrorizing a community. Pam got to work. She created a new anonymous email account and a fake marketplace profile. Concerned neighbor, she called it. She contacted the seller of the recreational vehicle compliance seizure ad. Hello, she wrote. My neighbor at 124 Oak Street has a new ATV parked in his driveway. It's an eyesore and a clear violation. Can you schedule a compliance pickup? The reply came back in less than 10 minutes. Absolutely. We can be there tomorrow evening around 8 p.m. Please ensure the vehicle is accessible. The standard $500 recovery fee will apply to the owner. They didn't even question it. The next evening, the stage was set. Chase's old rickety ATV sat at the end of my driveway looking perfectly, beautifully non-compliant. Pam was in the house monitoring a live feed from 3 different cameras we'd set up. Our front doorbell, a camera hidden in a bush, and one on the dash of my truck, which was parked across the street. Pam mirrored the live camera feed to the detectives so they could watch and listen in real time. She was our director, our mission control. My job was simple: stay visible, stay calm, and play the part of the unsuspecting homeowner. At 7:55 p.m., a large unmarked flatbed truck rumbled down our street. It wasn't some professional towing company. It was an old rusty Ford, the kind you see on a farm. It pulled up and parked in front of my house. 2 men got out. One was Gary Peterson, the HOA board member. Thither was Gage, the head of HOA Security. Gage, with his military-style haircut and his constant scowl, the guy who zipped around in his golf cart writing tickets for holiday decorations, left up a day too late. He wasn't wearing his usual security uniform. Tonight, he was dressed in jeans and a black hoodie. He looked less like a security guard and more like a common thug. They walked up to the ATV. Gage gave it a kick. "Yep, this is it," he grunted. They didn't knock on my door. They didn't leave a notice. They just started unhooking the winch on their truck. This was it, the moment of truth. I opened my front door and walked out onto the porch, holding a mug of coffee, trying to look confused. "Excuse me," he called out. "Can I help you?" Gage turned and a nasty smile spread across his face. He'd clearly been waiting for this confrontation. "Evening, Mercer. Just performing a compliance pickup. This vehicle is in violation of Bylaw 11F. "I've never heard of Bylaw 11F, I said calmly. "And you're on my property. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "We're not leaving," Gage said, taking a step toward me. His posture was aggressive, his shoulders squared. He was trying to intimidate me. "We're taking the vehicle. You can get it back when you pay the $500 fine." I stood my ground on the top step of my porch. "You're not taking anything. This is theft. I'm calling the police. We are the authority here." Gage snarled, puffing out his chest. He was close now, standing at the bottom of the steps, looking up at me. He was trying to use his physical presence to bully me into backing down. It wasn't working. He was all bluster, a cheap imitation of a tough guy. The whole situation felt surreal, like a scene from a bad movie. And Gage was about to go off script. The police were supposed to move in once the ATV was on the truck to catch them in the act of transporting stolen property. But Gage was getting impatient. He wanted a fight. The hook was set. Thaline was taut, and he was about to make the biggest mistake of his night. Gage took another step up, invading my personal space. His face was inches from mine. I could smell the stale coffee on his breath. "You think you're so smart, Mercer? Coming to the meetings, asking questions? You should have learned to keep your mouth shut." His voice was a loud growl meant to be menacing. All I could think was how cliché he was. He was a caricature of a bully, a man whose only power came from a polo shirt with a logo on it. "This has nothing to do with the meetings, Gage," I said, my voice steady. I didn't raise it. I didn't back down. I just held my ground. "This is about you and Gary trying to steal a vehicle from my driveway. Leave now." That was when he did it. He shoved me. It wasn't a hard shove, not enough to knock me over, but it was a clear, unambiguous act of assault. He put both hands on my chest and pushed. "You don't tell me what to do," he hissed. This was the moment where it could all go wrong. Every instinct screamed at me to react, to shove back, to defend myself. I've been in tough situations before. I know how to handle myself. But I also knew that if I laid a hand on him, I would muddy the waters. I would give Karen and her cronies an opening. They would twist it, claim I was the aggressor. The whole narrative would shift. So, I did the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I did nothing. I took the shove, stumbled back a step and regained my balance. I raised my hands slowly, palms open, a universal sign of de-escalation. "Gage, you just assaulted me," I said, my voice still calm, but with a new heartage. "You did it in front of a witness." I nodded toward Gary, who was looking distinctly uncomfortable over by the truck. "And you did it on camera." Gage's eyes widened. He glanced around looking for a camera he couldn't see. The seed of doubt had been planted. His tough guy facade began to crumble, replaced by a flicker of panic. He had miscalculated. He expected me to fight, to get into a shouting match, to stoop to his level. He never expected me to be disciplined. He never expected me to be 2 steps ahead. "What camera?" he blustered. But the conviction was gone. "The one that just recorded you putting your hands on me," I said. "The one that's streaming live to the police department." It was a bluff, but a good one. Within seconds, Pam pushed the live feed to the detective's line, turning the bluff into a real-time stream. It was all the signal Pam and the police needed. As the words left my mouth, the night exploded with light and sound. 2 unmarked sedans peeled out from their hiding spots down the street, their headlights flashing, their sirens suddenly erupting with a deafening wail. They screeched to a halt, boxing in the flatbed truck. Doors flew open and 4 plainclothes detectives emerged, their badges hanging from their necks, their expressions all business. Gage froze. His face went from confusion to disbelief to pure, unadulterated terror in the space of about 2 seconds. He looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a freight train. Gary Peterson over by the truck dropped the winch hook he was holding. It clattered loudly on the pavement. He put his hands up in the air before anyone even told him to. Officer Miller was the first one to reach us. He walked right past me and got directly in Gage's face. "HOA Security," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You have the right to remain silent." Gage started stammering. "Wait, this is a misunderstanding." We were enforcing the bylaws. You were attempting to steal a vehicle and you assaulted this man, Miller said, nodding toward me. We have it all on video. We heard it all live. There. Sergeant Green lit the early stop the second the shove hit the live feed. He turned Gage around, pushed him against the side of the flatbed, and cuffed him. The click of the handcuffs was one of the most satisfying sounds I have ever heard. Another detective was cuffing Gary, who was babbling about just following orders from Karen Duke. He was singing like a canary, trying to throw his boss under the bus before he was even in the back of the car. It was pathetic, but I wasn't surprised. Bullies and their followers are only brave when they think they have the upper hand. The second the tables turn, they fold like a cheap suit. I stood on my porch and watched the whole thing unfold. Pam came out and stood beside me, her arms sliding around my waist. We didn't say anything. We just watched. We watched as they put Gage and Gary into separate cars, while an officer photographed the truck, the winch, and the bait ATV. Our plan, born of anger and frustration, came to a perfect clinical conclusion. It was a clean bust. No violence, no ambiguity, just a couple of small-time crooks caught in a trap of their own making. I should have felt relieved. I should have felt victorious. And a part of me did. But another part of me knew this wasn't over. Gage and Gary were just the hired help. The head of the snake was still out there. Karen Duke wasn't on the scene. She was smart enough to keep her hands clean, to send her minions to do her dirty work. We had them, but we didn't have her. Not yet. As they drove her flunkies away, I knew the next phase of the battle was just beginning. We had won the skirmish, but the real fight was still to come. The immediate aftermath of the sting was a whirlwind of official procedure. We gave our statements again, this time to the detectives. Pam handed over a thumb drive containing all the evidence, the stitched-together doorbell videos of Madison's Joyride, the AirTag data, screenshots of the marketplace ads, and most importantly, the high-definition multi-angle video of the attempted theft and Gage's assault. The detectives were impressed. "You two did most of our job for us," one of them said with a wry smile. They told us Gage and Gary were being booked, and that based on Gary's immediate confession, they would be paying a visit to Karen Duke later that night. We finally got back inside our house well after midnight. The bait ATV had been towed away as evidence. The street was quiet again. It was over. We thought we had them. We had done everything right. We had played by the rules and used the system to expose their rotten little enterprise. We went to bed exhausted but satisfied. Justice, it seemed, was working. The next morning, however, we got a call that reminded us that the system can be manipulated. It was Officer Miller. His voice was tight with frustration. "Mr. Mercer, Pam, we have a problem. The video you provided of last night's incident. The SD card from your dash camera is missing." I felt a cold pit in my stomach. "What do you mean missing?" I asked. "It was in the camera in my truck. Your forensics team took it out themselves." "I know. Miller said it was logged into evidence last night. This morning, the bag was there, the seal was broken, and the card was gone. We're tearing the station apart, but it's vanished." Pam and I looked at each other. We knew instantly what had happened. This wasn't a random mistake. This was deliberate. "Karen," Pam said, her voice barely a whisper. "She must have a lawyer who knows someone who pulled a string." "We can't prove that," Miller cautioned. "But the timing is suspicious. Karen Duke and her lawyer were at the station until 3 a.m., trying to get Gage and Peterson released. They were in the building. The dash cam footage was the single best piece of evidence. It had a clear, unobstructed view of the entire confrontation. It captured Gage's ords, his aggressive posture, and the shove. Without it, the case against him for assault became my word against his. It was a classic move. If you can't fight the evidence, make the evidence disappear. I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp. They were still trying to rig the game. "It's okay," Pam said, ever the strategist. "They don't know we have backups." She pointed to our server rack, humming quietly in the corner of the office. The camera automatically uploaded the full-resolution file to our cloud server, the second it connected to our Wi-Fi. "We have a perfect copy." I relayed this to Officer Miller. There was a moment of silence, then a low chuckle. "You two are really something else," he said, the relief in his voice palpable. "Okay, email me a link to that file immediately. In the meantime, this changes things. A missing piece of evidence from a secure locker isn't just a problem. It's a crime." My sergeant is furious. He's authorizing a search. We sent the file, and then we waited. The hours ticked by. We knew the police were moving, but we didn't know what was happening. The feeling of helplessness was infuriating. We had done everything right, and still the Dukes were finding ways to slither out of trouble. What makes someone untouchable? Maybe it's not about never getting caught. Maybe it's about having the power to erase the proof after you are. Late that afternoon, Officer Miller called again. He didn't sound frustrated anymore. He sounded triumphant. "You are not going to believe this," he said. He told us what happened. Armed with a warrant, 2 detectives had paid another visit to Karen Duke. They weren't there to ask questions this time. They were there to search her house, her car, and her personal belongings for the missing SD card. Her lawyer was present, of course, blustering about harassment and rights violations. Karen herself was a picture of indignant innocence, sipping tea on her veranda while the police searched her home office. They didn't find it in the house. They didn't find it in her car. Finally, as per the warrant, a female officer asked to search Karen's purse. Her lawyer immediately objected. That's an invasion of privacy. You have no cause. But the warrant was airtight. It specified any and all personal effects. Karen, her face turning pale, clutched her expensive designer handbag to her chest. "There's nothing in there," she insisted, her voice trembling slightly. The officer calmly but firmly took the purse. She opened it up. Inside, nestled amongst the wallet, the lipstick, and the car keys, was a small clear plastic baggie, the kind used for evidence. Inside the baggie was a tiny black micro SD card. The evidence tag was still partially attached. "Ma'am," the detective said, holding up the bag, "can you explain what a piece of evidence from an active police investigation is doing in your handbag?" According to Miller, Karen completely fell apart. The calm, composed HOA president vanished, replaced by a stammering, panicked mess. She claimed she had no idea how it got there. She suggested I must have planted it. She accused the police of setting her up. She tried every desperate, pathetic excuse in the book, but the evidence was right there in her hand, in her purse. She had personally stolen a piece of evidence from a police station. She hadn't just crossed the line, she'd pole vaulted over it. "Karen Duke is under arrest," Miller said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "The charge is tampering with evidence, a felony. Her daughter stole a vehicle. Her cronies attempted to steal another one, and she, the mastermind, tried to cover it up and got caught red-handed. I think it's safe to say the Duke dynasty is over." The news was stunning. It was the twist we never saw coming. Her arrogance, her belief that she was above the law was so profound that she had committed a crime far more serious than the ones she was trying to cover up. She'd personally handed us the final irrefutable piece of evidence we needed to bring her whole corrupt world crashing down. The fight wasn't over, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The untouchable queen had just been checkmated, and she had moved the final piece herself. The end came not with a single dramatic bang, but with a series of quiet, orderly clicks of the legal and bureaucratic system she had so long held in contempt, playing out first in a sterile courtroom, and then in a crowded community hall. First came the court dates. We were there for all of them. Madison's was in juvenile court. She stood before the judge, a different person from the sneering girl who had stolen my ATV. She was small, quiet, and terrified. Her mother wasn't there to protect her. Karen was out on bail and fighting her own more serious charges. With the mountain of evidence against her, our videos, the AirTag data, the testimony from a dozen neighbors, and the near-fatal encounter with Sarah's baby, her lawyer had no choice but to advise her to plead guilty. The judge did not go easy on her. He spoke about responsibility, about consequences, and about the profound danger she had put the community in. The sentence was firm: 1 night in a juvenile detention center to give her a taste of real consequences, 2 years of probation, a suspended driver's license until she was 18, mandatory enrollment in a reckless driving education program, 200 hours of community service, and full financial restitution. That meant the Dukes had to pay for the full cost of repairs to my ATV, Sarah's stroller, and the rosebush she had destroyed. It was a comprehensive and fitting punishment. It wasn't just a slap on the wrist. It was a structured plan to force her to grow up. Next up were Gage and Gary. Faced with the undeniable video evidence and Gary's full confession, they both took plea deals. They got probation, fines, and community service. Gage later lost his security license in the administrative review. Their careers as small-time tyrants were over. The main event was Karen Duke. Her case was more complex. The evidence tampering charge was a felony, far more serious than anything else. Her expensive lawyer tried every trick in the book, filing motions and creating delays. But the fact remained. The stolen SD card was found in her purse. Her trial was set for a later date. But the writing was on the wall. Her power, her reputation, her entire world was collapsing. The emergency HOA meeting was packed. Not 20 people, hundreds. Years of small fines and big threats sat in that room like heat. I took the podium and laid out the day. The theft, the crash, the sting, the missing SD card, the arrest, the warrant, the card found in Karen Duke's purse. No speeches, just times, dates, video stills, and police reports. When I finished, it was quiet for one long breath. Then the room broke. Emotion hit the floor. A vote of no confidence. Our bylaws allow a special removal vote with a simple majority at an emergency meeting. Hands went up like a wave. Passed. Another motion. End the contract with Gage's security team. Passed. You could feel the neighborhood unlock. We elected an interim board on the spot. Steady people, neighbors who listen. Mr. Henderson, Tom, others who had never been given the mic. A few days later, the impound called. My ATV was ready. The Duke's insurance covered their pairs. I signed the chain of custody form. The last paper in a stack that felt like a mountain. Keys in hand. I rolled the ATV into the sun. Fresh plastics, straight wheel. The engine came alive with a calm, even note. I buckled my helmet. No rush, no show. I eased out, took the long way home. Full stops at every sign. It felt good to be boring. Pam waited on the porch. Arms folded. Smiling in that way that says, both finally. And I told you we would get here. I parked in the garage, killed the engine, and listened to the quiet, earned quiet. We did not win by shouting. We won by being steady. We called right away. We recorded everything. We let the truth be heavy and patient. Their power was noise. Our power was proof. What makes someone untouchable? Nothing. It is a story bullies tell, and it breaks the moment people stop believing it. When a street stands together with video, witnesses, and votes, no one is untouchable. Not a spoiled teenager with a phone. Not a security tough guy with a bad-shaped sticker. Not a president with a gavel and a shaky signature. In the end, accountability looked simple. A vote counted, a case number filed, a receipt stamped, a helmet buckled. The rain ended, the board reset, the scam exposed. I took one last look at the driveway, at Pam, at the garage light glowing warm. Then I shut the door. Justice for once sounded like an engine idling.